Would I be the a-hole for not telling my siblings about their true paternity and taking everything in my dad's will? I, 38, have been in contact with my dad and 2 younger siblings for many years. My dad always treated me like crap because he was convinced that my mom cheated on him, because she did, a lot, and trapped him into an awful marriage and that I was not biologically his. For my 13th birthday, my dad bought me a paternity test, and even though the test results came back that I'm indeed his, he accused me, or my mother, of sleeping with the test guy. Lol. I've also done an ancestry DNA test and also matched with all his relatives, so I'm pretty sure that, unfortunately, he is my bi-dad. I've known for a long time that my younger sister was not my dad's. When I did my ancestry DNA test, my sister wanted to get one too. My mom freaked out, admitted her indiscretion, and begged me to convince my sister that it was a waste of money and that she could just have a copy of my results. I did, because I thought I was protecting her and she was going through a rough time at the time. I recently got a notification about an ancestry DNA match. I looked it up and it looks like my brother's ex-wife got one of the kids for both my brother's kids. And lo and behold, my brother's kids only seem to share relatives from my mom's side. FYI, my profile uses a screen name, so she would not have recognized who I was. My brother and sister have been really horrible to me for years. Comments about how I owed their dad for him putting a roof over my head as a child, and how dare I accept items from their grandmother's estate, etc. I put up with it for years because they are younger, and honestly not that bright. I thought that they'd come around eventually. My dad made sure in a drunken fight with my mother to give me a copy of his will, still have it, so that I knew that he had put a stipulation in there about his estate being divided amongst his biological children. I know that he has not changed his will since, because his mental capacity has changed. Too much info. Would I be the a-hole if I did not tell my siblings and just let this play out at the will reading? Take everything and kick them out of the family home. I would also be setting up funds for my nephew since my loser brother doesn't pay child support. My husband thinks that this is stooping to their level, as they both rely on his estate currently for survival, so this will ruin them. But they have no education or way to support themselves currently. But I kinda want to stoop. Now for the top comments. Stoop, stoop, stoop. Seriously though, not the a-hole. Your half-siblings sound like entitled pieces of work. Also, you didn't write the will, so I think I just have to leave it as it is, and it will stoop itself. My sister will likely be the one to push the DNA test. She's threatened this before, in an effort to increase her share and cut me out. So she doesn't know about your DNA test? Then I would sit on it. And when she pushes for a DNA test, agree as long as everyone is tested. A great example of fool around and find out. She believes that at 13 I slept with a test guy to get a favorable result. If you don't follow the will, you would be the a-hole for not following his wishes. He knew what he was doing by specifically adding biological. Technically, I think this is the exact opposite of what he thought he was doing, since it sounds like the dad thought Opie wasn't his bi kid, but the others were, when in reality the opposite is true. But yeah, follow the will and take everything. Your siblings sound like a-holes. Not an a-hole considering how they treated you. If this was only about your father and they hadn't treated you any differently, then you would be in the wrong. They both rely on his estate currently for survival, so this will ruin them. They have no education or way to support themselves currently. How is this your fault? What would they do if the roles were reversed? The way I look at it, they already showed me what they would do. Currently, they think that I am the one that is not biologically his, and they used this to keep me from acquiring items my grandmother left for me when she passed. Not overly valuable, but sentimental to me. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not coming back home when I got kicked out? I, 20 female, am living with my parents and trying to move out for the past year, but I've never found a good time to tell them. They were too busy or not happy that day. I'm the second oldest of 7. I work 50 hours, take care of the kids in the home, and try to have friends. I argue with them when I want to go out, don't want to do something with family, or want to be alone. 1 week was exhausting for me and I needed a break. They wanted me to work out with them, something we like to do as a family. I was sore already and was going to work all weekend, so I said no. They said I had no choice, and I said, no, I do have a choice. I'm not doing it. My mom took my phone, which I own completely, and said I was disrespectful, disobedient, and have to do what they say because they're my parents. When they finished working out, they talked to me. I said the same thing. They still weren't happy and said I was disrespectful and I have to listen to them. I just kept saying the same thing. When my older brother, 27, got there, I told him what happened, and when the argument started back up, he jumped in and called them out for not respecting what I asked and just stood for me. That made them madder. They said I had no place saying anything and told him to leave and not come back. My dad turned to me, asking me why he would do that, and I said he repeated everything I already told you and you guys weren't listening to me, so he stood up for me. My dad grabbed my keys, threw them at me, and said, "You don't have a job. I work for them. And don't come home." Then he left. My mom wouldn't let me leave and took my keys from me. I own this vehicle completely. So I called my brother from my work phone, asked him to pick me up, and I left. We went to his place and were there for a few hours when my mom showed up and begged me to come back home. At first I said no, that I was kicked out. But she kept begging, so I said I'll only come to get my phone and my keys, but I'm not staying because Dad kicked me out. We argued more, but finally she agreed. I got my things and went to leave, but my mom stopped me to ask for 5 more minutes to talk, and I said no, that's not what we had agreed on, and she kept begging, so I agreed. We talked but went back to the same argument that I spent an hour trying to leave. I had tried to walk out, but she blocked me. Then my dad came out and told me I can't leave. I said, "Yes, I can. You kicked me out." He then apologized and said, "I didn't mean it. I was mad at your brother." I said, "That's not okay. I really don't want to stay here anymore. I'm gonna go and I'll come back to talk in a couple days. I need to think and figure out exactly what I want." Finally, my dad let me go. But then the next day was my little brother's baseball game and I went to watch. Both my parents talked to me. My dad said, "I understand if you don't want to work for me anymore. I don't blame you, but please think about it." My mom begged me to come back home, and I said I don't think that's going to happen. I really need space. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to go back at all? Add on. I have been staying with my brother and I'm actively applying to apartments. Not the a-hole. Move out. This. Also, parentification is illegal. If they are turning you into a third parent for your siblings, then that just isn't right. It's mistreatment, but oftentimes isn't illegal. Illegal and immoral aren't the same. She's 20, not 6. If she was 6 and being left to care for the kids, then yes, it's illegal, but not when she's older. Well, your parents are toxic AF, and you need to get far away and find a job that is not working for them. Also, if you were their employee and had been getting paid legally, not under the table, then you being fired could be improper dismissal potentially based on labor laws where you live, allowing you to go to a labor board over it. Completely agree. Also, they may need OP to actually do the work. Also, all that free childcare they lost. OP is just being used and is far better off without them. You need to move out on your own. These are control tactics they're using, which is fairly abusive and not okay. They're not respecting your boundaries, and they're not treating you like an adult. It's time to move out and figure out what kind of relationship you want with them. I would strongly advise not going over to their home anymore and stick to neutral territory where they cannot take your keys and phone. These people just want their slave back. She needs to move out, get a job that has nothing to do with her family and leave them to sort out their own babysitting. Jesus, of course not the a-hole. They stole your property, try to physically prevent you from leaving, also a crime, and sound toxic, controlling, and possibly abusive. I'm really happy you got out safe and got your belongings back, but please do not go back to that house. It won't be safe, and since you've already left once, they may very well be more severe in their effort to prevent you from leaving next time. Stay with your brother, get a new job, and enjoy your freedom now that you're out and safe. There are also a number of support subs here that can be helpful with what you're going through. Next story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for not paying off my sister's BMW?" About a year ago, my sister Gina, 23, bought a BMW she couldn't afford. She also had a bad habit of getting expensive items for TikTok and Instagram posts. I lucked out of hitting the jackpot with my wife and job. My wife typically makes a lot more money than I do, but she's currently on bed rest with a difficult pregnancy. It has been almost 2 months, but it will last the rest of the pregnancy. She has inherited aplastic anemia. While we have some savings, we live within our means with 2 paid-off cars and a nice 2-bedroom house. My dad, who speaks English as a second language, calls me upset that someone is trying to steal my sister's car. It was being repossessed for non-payment. I called my sister and asked what was going on. She first said she was 1 month behind, then admitted she was 3 months behind. She said she would have the money next week. She never called a car dealership to follow up, and the car was sold. sticking my sister with the remaining balance. Now she doesn't have a car and is driving my dad's older Jeep. I have even offered my car for her to use, but it's a Toyota and she rejected it. Now she's been harassing both my parents because she says I could have lent her the money, and my wife is lazy about her pregnancy. Now I'm getting unwanted advice about getting my wife back to work since she has worked from home previously. My wife is sick. I'm already worried about her health. She's losing weight around 6 months and isn't eating well. My sister has told me our mom had 7 kids, and my wife is milking the pregnancy for attention. At this point, I cut my sister off and stopped going to my parents' house where she lives. A few family members think I am the a-hole for not helping my sister financially with a car that she couldn't afford in the first place. Now for the comments. Your sister sounds like an entitled brat. You do not owe her anything. Her lack of concern for your wife and her unborn niece/nephew is incorrigible. She's an adult now and needs to start acting like one. OP, you need to put your wife and unborn child first. That means blocking all of them completely until, well, after your wife and newborn have had plenty of time to recuperate. Not today, Hall, obviously. How does your sister have the nerve to suggest that your pregnant wife should work so you can give your sister money? Just curious, how many hours per week your non-pregnant sister is working? If she needs money, perhaps she should get a second job. She's in school and works in a high-end store part-time. Great. She should live within her means and not try to make her family into wage slaves. Not today, Hall. You're a good person for sticking by your wife, and your sister is an entitled child who is in for a rude awakening. When adults buy things they cannot afford subsequent payments on, this is what happens. The family members who are behind her are enabling this entitlement. I've been with my wife since college, and it has always pissed my sister off, and some other family members, that my wife hasn't learned Spanish in the 7 years we have been together. My wife is also English, so her English is not always the same as Americans. My mom doesn't speak any English, so it's just been somewhat difficult for my wife to communicate with everyone. Translation can be messy. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for saying my brother's girlfriend isn't welcome here because she was pushy about my wife breastfeeding? I'll keep this short and simple. My wife has pernicious anemia and her body can't absorb vitamin B12. Even if she ate a bunch of food full of B12 or an entire bottle of supplements, it would make no difference. She has regular B12 injections to make sure she gets enough. My wife is pregnant. She's being monitored closely because lack of B12 is not good for the baby or for her. Her due date is in 20 days, and her doctors have told her under no circumstances is she to breastfeed. They say the lack of B12 will cause harm to our baby. The situation. When we announced her pregnancy, my brother's girlfriend wouldn't stop asking my wife about breastfeeding. At first, she was not bad. She gave my wife 2 books about it, but she would not stop bringing it up when my wife explained she can't breastfeed because of her condition. She invited my wife to a support group for moms to breastfeed, called Triple L or something like that. She went as far as to give my wife's email to other moms she knows, so they could email my wife about why she should breastfeed, and give my wife printouts from the internet about a woman who had B12 deficiency and breastfed. That woman was a vegan, and she didn't have my wife's medical condition. My sister-in-law also apparently solicited for milk donations in our behalf, even though we never asked for it. We wouldn't take milk from random strangers. There's no regulations or checks and balances where we live, so we have no idea what was in the milk. We asked her to stop it, but she wouldn't. The last straw was her having these donors emailing my wife after we asked my sister-in-law to stop. I understand she's passionate about it, and it worked for her with my nephew. But she isn't a doctor, and neither are the people emailing my wife. Since she wouldn't stop when I asked her, I told her she's no longer welcome in our home. My wife made a new email address, and we are going to listen to actual doctors. My brother's girlfriend actually said the doctors don't know what they are talking about, which is so out there I can't even. My brother reamed me out for speaking to his girlfriend harshly, and he says I owe her an apology. For the record, he backs up what she says, and thinks my wife needs to listen to her. His girlfriend is mad too, and thinks our baby is unfortunate because of all this. I get she was trying to help, but she went way over the top in my humble opinion. Not today, home. A baby with severe B12 deficiency can have permanent brain damage. I would trust the doctors who understand your wife's condition more than a bunch of random internet articles. What you said is exactly what the doctor said. They gave examples of case studies for us to read to make sure we understood, and they are meticulous about my wife's blood work to ensure all is well. The last thing we want is a problem like you described. I had to leave a breastfeeding support group for this reason. Lactivists telling a mom to ignore doctors and not give formula to a baby with a jaundice, which also cause brain damage. They're just so awful. I hope your wife is okay emotionally, and you both know formula-fed babies are perfect too. She wasn't trying to help. She was trying to control your wife. I wouldn't speak to her again until she apologized for violating your privacy and emotionally mistreating your wife. My wife breastfed and joined a bunch of groups. Even she said it gets cult-like with the mothers in these groups. You guys have to do what's best for you and your baby. As long as the baby's healthy, breast or formula, you guys do you. I noticed the changes when my sister-in-law had my nephew. She breastfed him until the age he was old enough for school, but he was homeschooled so it worked out for them. She learned lots of things from these other moms that my wife and me disagree with actually. Yeah, my wife and I agreed as long as our daughter was getting the nutrients she needed to thrive, she would breastfeed. My daughter stayed on a boob a little longer than expected, right around 2. But once she found pizza, she no longer wanted breast milk. Lol. Triple L is La Leche League, and they can be militant. I personally have seen them harass parents for buying formula and do nurse-ins at the offices of doctors who have the gall to offer a quieter and more comfortable nursing area than a waiting room full of sick kids. You're not day-hall by any means. You're standing up and protecting your spouse and soon-to-be little one during a very emotional and scary time. Fed is best. 100% doesn't matter if it's breast or formula. Fed is best.